joining us now on This Is the Day is Timone A. Davis, who is an assistant professor of pastoral theology at Loyola University in Chicago, and she's also the author of Intergenerational Catechesis, Revitalizing Faith Through African American Storytelling. Timone, thanks so much for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing marvelous today. Thank you for asking me to hang out with you all for a few.
So let me ask you, you're not having the weather that Kevin's talking about. You're not going to get 5 feet of snow out in Illinois, are you?
We are not.
That's good.
No.
That's just
something nice about being in the Midwest. You know, it kind of evens out a little bit from the extremes of the coast.
Yeah. No, we know about those extremes, so maybe I'll go to the Midwest.
There you go.
Because, it gets a little crazy. Well, Timone, maybe we could start off by exploring the title and the concept of intergenerational catechesis. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
You know, when I really started thinking about African American storytelling, I realized that it lives a lot of the times in our gatherings, right? So we gather for family reunions and things like that. And there's always at least one person who's the storyteller, who's the keeper of the family story, right? And when that person starts speaking, everybody tends to gather around. You know, it's not like this person is telling the story just for the grown-ups, or this person is telling the story just for the kids. The person is telling the story of the family for everyone. And I really started thinking about if we would do catechesis in that way, maybe then our catechesis would be more holistic, right? It would involve all of us instead of separating us out. There's a lot that I can learn from my elders. And there's even more that I can learn from young adults and teens. But if we're not all in the same room having this conversation about God, then we're missing some voices. And so I leaned into that whole intergenerational piece to talk about how we can have faith conversations when everyone is in the room.
Yeah, and if you could expand on that too, Timone, and talk about especially the African American tradition of storytelling and how that can sort of help us in learning and growing in our faith.
The African American piece is rooted in this call and response, where one person says something and the people who are listening, they say something in return, and it's an exchange. Right. So it's not just that the person who tells the story has this captive audience that is passive, but the listener is active in that, and the fact that they would be like, oh yeah, I remember that part, or I remember when they did this, and okay, well, wait a minute, you should tell it the other way, you know. And so it's this activity in which everyone is engaged in the story, but there's really one storyteller, but everyone else has a part to play. And so it's unlike theater where the action is on the stage and the people in the audience are passive listeners.
Yeah, it's engrossing to listen to the stories too. And I know that because of my wife's family always does this all the time. What are some of the ways catechetical leaders can use these storytelling skills in their teaching?
I think one of the first ways is to really begin to explore one's own story, to really have some insight into who you are and the parts of your life that you would want to share with other people. This storytelling technique is rooted in a method I call my story, your story. And it doesn't come to life, I don't feel, until I've shared a part of me and a part of my story. So I, as the one who initiates storytelling, has to also be the one who initiates being vulnerable in sharing parts of my story, parts of my faith story, that then invites the listener to intersect, right? We're talking about this call and response. And so the listener then says, oh, well, you know, something like that it happens in my life. Very much like you did when you said, well, my wife's family does a lot of that, right? Mm-hmm. So now we have this intersection. We come together, and this linkage then says that, you know what, we are really actually part of this one family. We begin to see our connections more clearly when we're sharing our stories. And in understanding that, then we can reach beyond the systems that are in place that would keep us separate.
There's certain ways that you can have people recognize how important their individual story is to the community of faith.
Oh, of course. I remind people that as Christians, we are called to witness to God's saving power, witness to God's grace, witness to God's mercy. We are called to be witnesses. And in order to witness, we have to tell a story, right? There's a story that comes out of why I believe what I believe. Well, that's rooted in my life, and so that's rooted in my story. And so as I began to unpack that for listeners, the listener thinks about their own story, right? And then they start going, oh, yeah, all right. Well, let's now dialogue about that. I believe once it's a dialogue, then we can drop our guard a little more, right? We are not so protective because we find that another is walking this journey as well, right? I always tell people there's a difference between telling your story that helps people connect with God better and telling your business. Telling your business is that piece about, I'm just going to really give you all of the gossip part of my life. And it gets you all caught up in a story to where you lean in and you go, well, what happened next? Well, that's not kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about learning to share our story. We're learning to share our story where we're getting the highlights of the story, right? We're not trying to immerse people into all of the emotions that happened around that, all of the trauma that may be involved in it, right? We're trying to give people this is how God reached into my life and really helped me, right? But I'm not trying to root people into all of the mess of God reaching into my life and helping me, right? And so there's a way in which we work at learning to tell our story so that we're not telling our business. And I really take people through that. I believe it's in the last chapter of the book on a way in which you can craft learning how to tell your story. And not as, oh, it's just devoid of emotion, but it is devoid of the gossipy aspect of your story, so that your story actually teaches more than anything else.
Well, Timone, this has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being with us. Where can people get a copy of the book?
Oh, definitely. It's on Amazon for sure. And it's now out in paperback. And it's also on the Rowan and Littlefield's website as well.
Well, thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to be with us, and have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank
Blessings.
you. Bye-bye.